Jon Meacham, His Truth is Marching On, John Lewis and the Power of Hope. Immerse yourself in the remarkable life and legacy of John Lewis, a key figure in the civil rights movement. As chronicled in Jon Meacham's book, His Truth is Marching On, John Lewis and the Power of Hope. This book summary explores Lewis's journey from a young boy in Alabama to a civil rights activist forging the path of justice and equality through nonviolent resistance. Discover how he bridged the gap between faith and social justice, and the courage he displayed in the face of adversity. By shedding light on Lewis's unwavering commitment to his cause, this summary offers a lesson in perseverance and the importance of taking a stand for what you believe in.
Faith, Injustice, and Civil Rights. A glimpse into the mid-1950s United States, the time of segregation, racism, and the brewing civil rights movement. John Lewis was born in Alabama, during the Jim Crow era, where African Americans suffered institutionalized racism and segregation. Growing up in such a dire situation, Lewis turned to faith and found hope in the social gospel. He was inspired by Martin Luther King Jr.'s teachings and, along with many other courageous people, fought for justice, equality, and dignity in the face of rampant racism and unpunished violence. Learning nonviolent resistance. The scene starts calmly. A group of black students enter a Woolworth's department store in downtown Nashville, Tennessee. They sit at the lunch counter trying to order, and when the waitress tells them to leave, they don't. This sit-in led to a series of nonviolent protests across the southern United States in 1960. Lewis learned the strategy of nonviolent resistance from Reverend James Lawson Jr., a committed pacifist who had studied under Gandhi, at American Baptist, a seminary in Nashville. Lawson taught Lewis and other students how to transform society through passive resistance, meet hate with love, and force political change with nonviolent demonstrations. In 1960, Ella Baker founded the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, where Lewis joined, and by February of that year, he was leading his own sit-ins at lunch counters and movie theaters around Nashville. The protests were harshly retaliated, with Lewis and his fellow students being regularly attacked and beaten by police and the public. Despite the danger, Lewis continued organizing and participating in these nonviolent protests. As a student, he learned the power of nonviolence as a protest strategy, which he applies in his activism to overthrow segregation and gain a movement. Riding for freedom. In the 1960s, the United States still had segregated bus stations in the Jim Crow South despite a court ruling for desegregation. The SNCC organized Freedom Rides to test the ruling and integrate stations. John Lewis joined the rides with a white Quaker. Along the way, they faced violent resistance but offered forgiveness and love instead of pressing charges. Despite the attacks and difficulties, the rides brought national attention to racism in the South, and civil rights issues came to the forefront of the nation's concerns. Lewis continued putting nonviolence into practice. John Lewis's triumph. Lewis, a young activist, went from being beaten in bus stations to sitting in the White House with the president. In 1963, as head of SNCC, Lewis delivered a fiery speech at the March on Washington, calling for social and economic equality. Although controversial at the time, the march is now considered a turning point in the civil rights movement. The turbulent year of 1964. The civil rights movement faced a series of devastating challenges in 1964 that threatened to derail their progress. From the bombing of a black church in Birmingham to the kidnappings and murders of activists in Mississippi, the movement was constantly put to the test. However, amidst these setbacks, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the landmark 1964 Civil Rights Act into law. Despite their differences on issues such as foreign policy, both Johnson and civil rights leader John Lewis recognized the need to work together for the greater good. Bloody Sunday and the Voting Rights Act. On March 7, 1965, civil rights activists marched from Selma to Montgomery to protest the unfair voting barriers faced by Black Americans. The marchers were met with violent opposition, including tear gas and nightsticks, resulting in what is now known as Bloody Sunday. This event prompted President Johnson to push for a new law to ban the tactics used to suppress the vote, resulting in the signing of the Voting Rights Act on August 6, 1965. While LBJ made the legislation official, he credited the courageous demonstrators, including Lewis, for doing the real work. The fighting spirit of John Lewis. John Lewis, a civil rights activist from the 60s, never gave up his fight for justice. Even in his 80s, he monitored the Black Lives Matter movement and found heart in their efforts. This summary presents Lewis's life journey, starting from his activism in Selma that paved the way for constitutional rights to his involvement in electoral politics. Lewis lived and breathed civil rights until his death in 2020, and his legacy as a pivotal figure in American history is undeniable.
Jon Meacham's His Truth is Marching On, John Lewis and the Power of Hope, offers a heartfelt tribute to the inspiring life and legacy of civil rights icon John Lewis. From the humble beginnings in Alabama, to leading nonviolent protests, to becoming a respected congressman, Lewis's steadfast dedication to justice, equality, and nonviolent resistance made an indelible impact on the civil rights movement and American politics. His enduring spirit serves as a shining example for generations to come. Though there is still much work to be done, Lewis's life and legacy demonstrate that even seemingly insurmountable challenges can be overcome when met with courage, determination, and hope.